You're watching CW Montana. This is the MTN 9 o'clock news.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. As the dust cleared last night and early this morning on Montana's primary election, the attention is already turning toward November. Tuesday set the general election stage for several high-profile races in the state and some other not-so-high-profile statewide contests. Here's MTN Chief Political Reporter Mike Dennison.
Topping the ticket this fall will be Montana's U.S. Senate contest between Republican Senator Steve Daines and Democratic Governor Steve Bullock. The two men had easy primary wins on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, Daines challenged Bullock to a series of 4 debates. Daines also has a new TV ad criticizing China for the coronavirus outbreak and calling for an immigration ban. And a Democratic group came out with its ad, blasting Daines for voting in March for a so-called slush fund to help big corporations recover from the pandemic. In the governor's race, it's Republican Congressman Greg Gianforte against Democrat Mike Cooney, the current lieutenant governor. You'll be hearing a lot from Gianforte about his business experience as he tries to turn the governor's office Republican for the first time in 16 years.
My proposition to Montana is very simple. I'm a business guy. I've spent my life solving problems and creating good paying jobs here in Montana. That's the message we started with, and that's the one we're going to finish with.
And Cooney says he'll emphasize a positive campaign, hitting familiar Democratic notes.
We're going to continue to talk about the importance of health care, having accessible health care in Montana, affordable health care, affordable prescription drugs. We're going to be talking about what the need to continue to invest in our public education.
In the battle for Montana's sole U.S. House seat, Democrat Kathleen Williams cruised to victory in her primary and says she'll offer a nonpartisan, pragmatic approach to problem solving.
I've traveled the state 75,000 miles on my car, talking to Montanans in every corner from Plentywood to Darby and Troy to Broadus and everywhere in between about what they care about and how I can be of service. And this is really about hard work, leadership, and service, not towing the party line.
Her Republican opponent will be State Auditor Matt Rosendale, who won a 6-way primary Tuesday. Like Gianforte, he's talking about business experience needed to help restart the economy.
We've had a lot of our businesses that have suffered, whether we're talking about Main Street or our farmers and ranchers. And my extensive business background just positions me perfectly to make sure that I can work with others to revive our economy.
We have plenty of other wide-open statewide races as well coming out of the primary. For Attorney General, Democrat Rafe Graybill, an attorney for Governor Bullock, will face off against Republican Austin Knudsen, a former Speaker of the Montana House. For Secretary of State, Republican Christy Jacobson, the current Deputy Secretary of State, emerged from a 6-person field and takes on Democratic State Senator Bryce Bennett of Missoula. In the race for State Auditor, Bozeman businessman Troy Downing won the GOP primary and will run against Democratic State Representative Shane Morajo, a Missoula attorney. And for State Superintendent of Schools, it's a rematch between Republican incumbent Elsie Arnson and Democrat Melissa Romano, who lost to Arnson in a close race in 2016. We also had a primary for State Supreme Court, setting up a fall showdown between Justice Lori McKinnon and challenger Mike Black, an attorney in Helena. So, get ready for some serious campaigning and the chance to make some real choices on the future leadership and direction of the state. At the Capitol, I'm Mike Dennison, MTN News.
All right, thank you, Mike. And you can see the complete election results and rundown on our website, ktvq.com. Voters will decide on a $1.6 million levy for School District 2. Superintendent Greg Upham announced the kickoff to that campaign today on Facebook Live. The $1.6 million levy would be for the elementary district and cover operational costs for kindergarten through the 8th grade. The levy would add $19.50 per year to property taxes on a $200,000 home. Mail ballots go out on June 17th, and the election date is July 7th.
Well, today kicks off the official date for the elementary levy. And I say that very respectfully. We're not living in a vacuum, completely understand the situation that's upon us, that the virus placed on us, and want to acknowledge that and respect that, very much so. There really isn't a specific earmark for these funds other than operational costs.
Upham says the elementary district had a $4.3 million deficit for this past school year. Montana state health officials reported 2 new COVID-19 cases today, both right here in Yellowstone County. And we also learned that there are 5 new cases in Bighorn County that haven't been reported yet by the state. 2 of the positive results in Bighorn County came as a result of those with symptoms, while 3 were asymptomatic and tested at one of the surveillance sites last week. Of those 5 cases, 4 are males, with 2 ranging between the ages of 50 and 59 and 2 over 70. The 2 cases here in Yellowstone County, a woman in her 20s and a woman in her 60s. Yellowstone County now stands at 13 active cases and 102 total cases. The state total is now 525 with 464 recovered. Well, the spring warm-up is melting snow in the mountains, sending massive amounts of water flowing into the Yellowstone River and many other waterways. That's left many homes and property along the Yellowstone River near Shepherd under a layer of floodwater. Q2's Mitch Levy was in Shepherd today to get a sense of the flooding.
Every year, summer snowmelt swells rivers across Montana. Yellowstone County Disaster and Emergency Services knows of 2 homeowners on the Yellowstone trying to keep their houses dry, but many more are seeing flooding in low-lying areas of land.
A couple of homes throughout the county that access to the home might have been cut off or restricted. Otherwise, it's been just low-lying land and pretty significant erosion along the bank due to the high flows.
The Yellowstone River's minor flood stage starts at 13.5 feet of depth. The water has dropped about a foot since yesterday, but is expected to be hovering around flood stage through the weekend. Folks with property along the riverbank should take precautions.
Just make sure that your equipment is back away from the river. Make sure your animals are in a safe location so that they don't get cut off or swept down the river. Stay away from the banks. We never know when those are going to collapse and you become part of that flow.
With all of the lowland area flooding happening on the Yellowstone River right now, Yellowstone County Emergency Services personnel say that no one should be on the river this weekend, even if you have a hard-bottomed boat. Rescue would be extremely difficult for first responders if you did happen to get into some trouble.
So it's a very, very dangerous time to be on the river, even in a boat. I highly recommend nobody be on the river right now, at least through the weekend when the flows go down and the river gets a little more calm.
Reporting in Shepherd, Mitch Levy, MTN News.
I thank you, Mitch. And he also said there is no federal or state assistance available to flooded homeowners right now. Williams says that flooding isn't severe enough to meet the technical definition of a disaster. Well, more information about an apparent murder-suicide that happened Sunday in Billings. Kyra Osman and Andrew Klontz were found dead inside a home in the 2100 block of Canyon Drive. Both the victims, 34 years old, each died of a single gunshot wound. Police said Klontz is believed to have died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. So far, authorities have yet to release any other information, including the relationship between Ostman and Klontz. For a 6th straight day, peaceful protests continued on the Missoula Courthouse lawn. This as a second-degree murder charge is brought against former officer Derek Chauvin, and new charges were delivered against the other former officers involved in the arrest and death of George Floyd. MTN's Katie Miller spoke to the Missoula mayor today, who told us the protests are not a threat to public safety.
Another challenging week in the United States and in many communities around the country.
This is the 6th day in a row protesters are lining up in Missoula, and while there have been a few counter-protesters, Missoula Mayor John Engen says he believes the demonstrations will remain nonviolent. Engen says there is a plan in place just in case violence erupts.
There's just so much going on in the world today, it's really hard to know.
In response to concerns that militant left-wing groups will disrupt Missoula's peaceful protests,
we're prepared, but we don't perceive a threat today.
He says he hopes these demonstrations will bring about change.
Violence unprovoked against any human being is not the business of a police force.
In a city council meeting on Monday, Engen said the city shares a collective outrage and concern over police brutality.
We can always get better, and we are going to do that.
On Tuesday, protester Jay Matson told KPAX he does feel safe in Missoula, but knows what it's like to feel unsafe.
When I turned 16, I got my learner's permit to drive, and 2 weeks after I got that is when I first almost got shot by the police.
Mattson says that instance made him feel like he has no control.
You realize that your life is 100% out of your hands and in the hands of somebody else.
Ingen says the Missoula Police Department plans to update its use of force and implicit bias training.
I want people of color to know that they're safe in the hands of Missoula's finest.
Ingen also made it clear that if any Missoula police officer violates policy, there are consequences.
Our officers know that they're not above law and don't intend to be above the law.
In Missoula, Katie Miller, MTN News.
In a joint statement put out Saturday, the city of Missoula and local law enforcement said they stand in solidarity against racism and acts of discrimination. Still to come on tonight's 9 o'clock news, St. Vincent de Paul stepping up to the plate and helping serve our most vulnerable population during this pandemic. We'll tell you what they're doing in just a bit, but first, Bob McGuire's in with your full 7-day forecast.